Hey everyone, I hope you're doing good. Today I'm gonna go ahead and do some of these exercise problems that were assigned to me as homework in my CS course. So we're using Python in my CS course. It is this course code here in the Ontario curriculum, I guess. I did go ahead and censor my student number and instructor name just for privacy reasons. My instructor probably does not want his name on the internet, and student number is obviously confidential. I don't want that leaked as well. So yeah. But anyways, we were taught that each program should have a title block. This is just for the course itself, just so that my teacher knows, whose work he's marking, right? He will not even look at the code if you do not have this. So it's very, very important that you have this, right? Includes your name, your student number, the course code, a name for the program. In our case, it's going to be a flow chart, and I'll explain what it is in a second. And then the instructor's name, that's my teacher's name, and then the date, which is 20th September today. So here's our exercise. It is part of the Java notebook because he used to teach this course in Java, but then he switched over to Python in 2020, I believe. So let's get started. We will do exercise 9, and we will also go ahead and do exercise 3 as well. All right, so we'll do both of these, and let's get started then. All right. Okay. So it's telling us to create an application that gives us an output like this. Our output will be in the idle's shell, right, like this. And you can see that I was doing a little bit of homework here, and I just decided to, record myself with this one. Okay, we're gonna start off with the print statement. Oops, did that by accident. Yeah. Anyways, so it's gonna start off with flow chart symbols, right? Then we want to print a empty line because you can see that there's like a bit of a gap before they move on to the next line, so this is logical. Start or end symbol, and with an asterisk like that. And then again, you can see that there's like kind of like an empty space before we move on to the actual content. For the content, it's just going to be an asterisk that's multiplied, right? We can do this, and I'll explain the syntax a little bit earlier. This is actually something I learned new as well. Even though I've been using Python for a very, very long time, you can always learn new things, and this is why I took this course even. Yeah, I love my teacher. He's really good at teaching computer science. But anyways, let's see here. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So we have 9 asterisks in a straight line in our first sort of symbol that we should print, right? Because when we're printing this shape out, right, we don't want to print, we can't really print everything out in one single line. We have to create new separate lines, and we can go in a line by line basis. So this is what I kind of mean. I'll use my screen brush to kind of show you. So what I mean is that we have to run each of these lines separately, right, as different print commands, right? As opposed to having the whole thing and printing it in like one print statement. It doesn't really work like that, right? There's no way of doing that because there's so much like spacing and formatting that you must do, right? So anyways, let's go ahead and do that. So anyways, for the first symbol is just going to be 9, as I said, I believe. Let me just recount. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah, so it's 9 asterisks, and I'm gonna go ahead and save this, and I'm gonna run it. Don't mind the smiling face file, by the way. I'm just reusing the same file. I put everything in my OneDrive. So yeah. Anyways, let me just run this module, and as you can see, I'm actually gonna try to run a fresh shell like that. But as you can see here in our output, you can see we get the flowchart symbol, start or end of symbol, right? And you can see that there's a kind of like that white space, and that white space is being done by these empty print commands. And you can see that we have those those 8 lines. But there's actually an issue with this code, and that is spacing. To make this whole shape come true, there has to be some spacing done. And if you have a very close eye, you will notice this, right? Because you'll see that this is kind of this part of the shape, or like this line of the shape, right? It's kind of bulging outwards, right? It's kind of bulging outwards over here, as you can see, and that's happening because there's space over here. In the case of the first line, there's going to be a two um two spaces, right? Because you can see here that if we count this as a reference, right, because this is the most outermost point, right? So having it at the default spacing would make sense, right? But if we look over here, you can see that there is a two space because there's first this, and then it starts, right? You can see that over here this is empty, right? Even though in this part of the program you already have a asterisk there, right? So in our case, we're just gonna have to add a space over here, and then we obviously multiply this by 2 in this case, because it's gonna be 2 spaces, and we do the same thing on the other end because the other end is symmetrical. So it's just gonna be like this, and then multiply that by 2, save this, and then let's run this module. And now, as you can see, it's kind of in the middle, sort of to say, because of those spacings, right? The cursor, when it's executing it, it doesn't execute it here, rather it moves, because technically it's just printing empty line statements here. All right, now we can move on to the next part. This is this line over here. Okay, so let me go ahead and create a new line of code. Now in this command, right, a very important thing to know is that we do not need to add this part over here, and the reason for that is because there's no big space required to actually format this, right? And I'll kind of visually show you this by actually adding it, which is incorrect and it doesn't look similar to this program. But anyways, for now, what we're gonna do is we're gonna print an asterisk again, and in this case what we're gonna do is we're gonna add 1 space. So I'm gonna before I even add the asterisk, I should add just 1 space, right? Right, and another space as well for the end, right? Because the end also needs to be symmetrical, right? Because over here you can see that this is bulging out and this would be the outermost point, so having it as default would make sense, right? Because of the fact that it's the outermost, so changing its spacing wouldn't really make sense. But these are not the outermost, so changing them would based off the position of the outermost point would make total sense, right? It's just how it works. But in our case, you can see that those two are represented through here. Now we're gonna add our asterisks. So I'm gonna add the first asterisk over here, and then there's spacing, so we're gonna have to add some spacing. So again, add spacing, and in this case this is going to be actually multiplied by a specific amount because this is all empty space, so that's spacing, right? In our case it's the entirety of this line over here, which we know is 9, right? So we can just multiply this by 9, so this will run 9 times, and yeah, there you go. And after this runs, actually there's going to be another asterisk before the space, right? Because as you can see, before we just printed this asterisk and then we just had 9 spaces and that's it. But to end it off, we also need to add another asterisk and then the space of 1, right? So that's what this is doing. Now if I go ahead and run this module, that is happening because I accidentally added a plus. That's my bad. Let's run this module again. There you go. As you can see, it's coming out, right? It's coming out to be like this, right? It's not gonna be the exact same, right? Because this is like stretched out and it's meant for Java. It's just a little different. But based on the measurements that we took, it's good to go. Now we move on to the most outermost point, right? Which I was talking about. This is the outermost point, right? There's nothing that bulges more than this line over here, or this line, I should say, right? And because of that reason, we don't need to add any spaces. And if you notice, there's kind of like a logical pattern, right? It starts off with 2 spaces, moves on to 1 space, and then reaches to 0 space. So right now we're at 0 space, right? So basically subtracts by 1 each time. So before I do that, I did mention why we don't need this empty print statement, and I'm going to show you that right now. So if I add this empty print statement, this is completely wrong, by the way. Do not do this. Do not submit it like this. But if I did this, you can see that it adds this annoying little what do you call it? Space, right? And the reason for this space is because of that empty line. Over here it was done on purpose because there is like an empty space, but here there isn't, so we don't need it, right? So run this module again. There we go. So now you can see that annoying little space went away, and now we're nice and happy. Okay, so moving on to the outermost point. Again, as I explained, there's going to be no space, and so we're just going to add an asterisk, and then we're going to multiply it by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then 10. No, that doesn't sound right. So it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 1. I'll use a... Ooh, what did I do there? That is not good at all. Hold on. Sorry, wait a second. Okay, we're here, almost. Sorry, I don't know what I did. I'm using like a backup mouse right now because my main mouse died, so it's really weird. Doesn't even work properly. So yeah. There we go. There it is. Okay, sorry about that. So again, as I said, there's gonna be that times, and there's actually not gonna be times, there's gonna be a plus, right? Because we're gonna connect this string with the spaces as I was mentioning. So it's gonna be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So it's gonna be 11 spaces, right? So we're gonna add the space and then multiply by 11, and then we're gonna add the asterisk again. And now if we run this, as you can see, everything it's looking very similar to this, right? Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna run the exact same thing again, right? We're gonna do the opposite. So in this case, there's gonna be 1 space that we need to add, based off this being the outermost point, because it still holds true, right? Even though we're now beneath the top of the shape, it still holds true that this line is the outermost line, right? And 1 space is required before anything is outputted to the screen, and this is looking oddly familiar to this, right? So I'm just gonna go ahead, to this, because it's only 1 space, not 2, my bad. So let's just go ahead and add that. Save, run this module, and as you can see, nice, it's coming along, Now what we have to do is simply copy the first statement, and this statement is going to be the straight line, right? Because we're just adding it again, right? Now let's run this again, and everything should be good to go. As you can see, there you go, right? It looks exactly the same. Cool. So I'm gonna add a little comment here saying that this is the shape of the end start, or it's not of, actually, it's or. So let's fix that, start or end symbol. Then I just want to talk about the code a little bit, because my computer science teacher actually encouraged us to write a lot of, like, not encourage, actually told us to comment our code, or else he will assume that it was plagiarized, right? Because if you cannot explain it, how is it your code, right? So I'm just gonna say, again, I'm pressing the lock button by accident because it's so close to the delete button. Apple needs to fix their keyboards. Anyways, so I'm gonna say this shape was built with spacing in mind. Spacing in mind, where the spaces used were based off the how do you say, like, the bulge, like the outermost point. I should say the outermost point. Yes. Sorry, I'm just commenting my code. Outermost point. This is the reason for the spaces within the start and end of some commands. Okay. Cool. Let's go ahead and do the next one. So again, we need to print an empty line statement, and the reason for this is that there is a big white space before we move on to the next thing. So yeah, that's cool. So now for the next thing, it's going to be input / output symbol. Okay, let's go ahead and print this. And now this is the shape input / output symbol. And then we're gonna go ahead and print. So in this case, we have to start. In this case, it's not going to be symmetrical. Okay. In the last shape, you can see here that on both sides, this, I'm really bad at drawing this, but this side and this side, you can see that they're both symmetrical, meaning that if you're gonna add space on one side, you're gonna have to add space on the other side. But in this case, you can see that this side of the shape and this side of the shape are not symmetrical. So if you add space on one side, you don't necessarily have to add it unless the shape requires it somehow. In this case, it doesn't. All right. And oh, actually, yeah, maybe we'll see. We'll see. Okay. So let's go ahead and print out the first statement. So again, we're going to start off with the outermost point, which is here, and we're just going to go ahead and count. So in our case, it's going to be 1, 2, 3. Yeah, so it's going to be 3 spaces before we reach to the first, like, actual character being outputted. So we're going to add 3 white spaces. Then we're going to go ahead and add the asterisk and multiply this how many times we need it. So in our case, it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 times. And let's go ahead and see what appears. So run the module. And as you can see, we have it good enough. Now what we're going to do is we are going to add the next part. So again, print. Again, we're going to need to add a space. In this case, it's going to be 1, 2. 1, 2. So it's going to be 2. And then we can add the asterisk again. And in our case, the asterisk is just going to be 1. And then we're going to be moving 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 blank spaces before we reach the end. We have to add this, by the way. The end asterisk. Now over here, we're actually gonna have to add a space as well, because as you can see, there is an empty line over here, right? This is the most outermost point on this side, right? This side of the shape, right? This is the most outermost point. So it's just gonna be 1 space based off of this being the outermost point, because in reference of this side, it is, right? So it's just gonna be, we're gonna add it, right? And we're gonna add this. right, like that. And that's it, right? Because we just want one. So adding it like this times 1 doesn't make any sense because this does the same thing, less amount of code. Run the module. So I forgot to add over here, like add the plus sign. There we go. As you can see, it kind of looks like that. It's kind of coming along, right? Let's move on to the next point. So see, it's all about spacing. With these type of questions where it's asking you to format, you know, different, like, you know, different things, like different shapes and different symbols and stuff like that. It's all about the spacing. The spacing makes the huge difference. That's what I've noticed upon solving this. Because when I first started, I was kind of like, how do you do this? But it's all about space. I can't spell it in one go because it disappears a lot, but kind of ruined it. But space, okay? Anyways, enough of that. Let's go ahead and print this again. In this case, again, on this side of the shape, since this shape is not symmetrical or asymmetrical, we'll use this point as reference because this line is the outermost point, right, bulging to the side. And in our case over here, it's just going to be just one space, right? So we're just going to add one space here, and then we're going to add our asterisk, and then this asterisk, then there's going to be some space, right, because there's some white space. In our case, it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, I believe. We'll see if we have to add more, but I believe it's 7. And then we are going to add our asterisks again, and then in this case, on this side, it's going to be different, right, because it's asymmetrical. So on this side, the spacing is going to be different, and it's going to be based off this point, and based off this point, this line is 1, 2 spaces off, so it's just going to be times 2 here. Save this and run this module, and as you can see, it perfectly replicates this point. And now for our final sort of line, when we're printing it, we don't add any spaces here because this is the outermost point, right? So that is going to stay at the default point, and we're just going to go ahead and add as many asterisks there are, right, symbols, and that is just going to be the same as before in the top one, so it's going to be 9. And then on the case of the other side, so this side of the shape, it's actually going to have space because again this shape is asymmetrical, and on this side, we're going to go based off of this, and based off of this, it's 1, 2, 3. So we're going to have to add 3 spaces like that. We're going to save that. We are going to run that, and there you go. There you go. All right. So that is it. All this code will be on my GitHub. I'm gonna add everything to a GitHub folder, but I'm gonna first go ahead and upload this. Keep both. And I'm just gonna rename this to flow chart symbols. Okay. So that is this exercise here. Now let me just go back over here. And let's go ahead and try to build this one, which is pretty easy considering that we already understand the concepts. So in this case, it's just going to be a like this, right? The asterisk, and it's going to be for 15 because it literally says in the question statement, so it's going to be 15. It's going to be 7 asterisks high, so it's going to be like 7 over here. So just take out these two lines, right? And we'll get the middle of the or the sandwich, you can say, the meat, you could say, part of this whole equation, which is this part, and that's 5, right? If you count it, 1 2 3 4 5, and in here you can see there's that space, and to do that space we just use this, right? So it's gonna be like this, where we're gonna have this, right? And then it's gonna have, you're gonna add actual space, and this space is gonna be a specific number, and that is just 15 minus 2, because there's 2 over here that don't count, right? So it's all of these spaces, and that is going to be 13. And then you're gonna add the asterisk back, and then we're gonna go ahead and run that, and as you can see, that works perfectly. We do this 5 times. 1 2 3 4 5, and then we finish it off with this over here, and let's go ahead and run this, and there you go. All right, very, very simple. Much more simpler than what we were doing here, and definitely much more simpler than my smiling face thing that I've done. All this code is going to be on GitHub, by the way, if you want to check it out. But the smiling code one is this over here. All right, this was very, very meticulous, and I had to I had to calculate everything very, very sharply. But yeah, that's it from me. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Take care.